Hello and welcome to the webinar, Transforming Education with Microsimulations. Let me start by saying, first and foremost, thank you so much for attending today. My name is Jordan Novak. Some quick background on me. I am the Vice President of Products and Services here at Capsim Management Simulations. Been doing that for quite some time now, I think over a decade at this point. And I also am an instructor at DePaul University here in Chicago. And my focus there is teaching in the business school. I'm in the management and entrepreneurship department. I teach the capstone undergraduate course on strategy and then the capstone MBA course on strategy. So let's jump right into it and talk about how we can transform education by using something that we call microsimulations. So let me preface this, of course, with 2020 has been a year so far, right? We've dealt with a lot as educators. We've dealt with COVID-19 personally. We've dealt with terrible social injustice and then the protesting that's come out of that. And then we've had to move classes online. So there's been a lot of shifting that we've been faced with. That doesn't change the fact that our student population no doubt has great expectations. And there's great expectations coming from two areas, from the corporate side and from the student side. So real quick, on the corporate side, the expectations have been that their employees need to be taught what matters most to the corporation. And if they don't get that, they're gonna get that type of training from outside of higher ed, okay? And then student expectations have totally changed. We've heard all of the protests from students saying they want their money back. They're not really happy about these changing modalities and how education for them has shifted. And this isn't what they signed up for. But they also have this other type of expectation around a personalized yet familiar education throughout their curriculum. And it has to be high impact, it has to be meaningful, and it has to apply to the real world and make them ready today. So the challenge, okay, so where are we at today? Well, we know that we're teaching in unique and uncertain times. We don't know what the fall is gonna look like for many of us. Budget crises are abundant, but we're teaching in unique and uncertain times. But students now, as I mentioned, more than ever, are demanding high quality and impactful education. We should also empathize with our students for a moment, and especially the ones that are about to graduate and realize that they are going to be entering in a very different economy than most of us have ever had experience entering. And it's scary for them. So the economy that they're entering, the job market that they're entering, they need to be equipped with impactful skills that are going to help them land their job and be successful in their careers. And then, of course, there's changing modalities that will not only make us think about what we're teaching. Some of the aforementioned things that I mentioned are going to be affecting what we're teaching, but the changing modalities are going to be impacting how we are teaching. So what's the solution that's out there? Well, my belief is that we need to engage our students with experiential learning. We need to actually get them the experience that they're craving to make them successful in their career. So let's think about this in terms of expanding how experiential learning is used in their curriculum. So just so we're on the same page here, experiential learning, when I'm talking about that, that's the pedagogical approach where students are learning by doing or by observing other people doing. The essential concept here, though, is the importance of practice. They need to practice, 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 practice. And I'll be talking about that a bit more, but not just practicing, failing. That's a big part of it. So we kind of grappled with this at the MBA roundtable. We've worked with several deans of business schools. This was presented by Dean Kraft, actually to our company, when we talk about the typology of course-related experiential learning approaches that are out there. And I hope you look at this. Look, I'm coming from a simulation company and I use simulations in my classroom, but make no mistake, there's fantastic experiential learning activities that can be done out there. They range from cases to in-class exercises to games and competitions, simulations, of course, role plays, negotiations, these types of things. Even working with guest speakers, class projects. So by the way, these slides are going to be available to you. So I hope you can take some of this back and really take a larger thought about how are you incorporating experiential learning within your curriculum. When we grappled with this further at the MBA roundtable, you know, Kolb, Jester, Loeffler, McKean, well, especially Jester, Loeffler, McKean, they really baked the levels of experiential learning into these 4 different levels. And they range from lectures and readings to cases and these micro simulations to simulations, and then the external project. And the content, you could see how it varies, as well as the roles that we take on as educators, how customizable it is, what the learning style is of the students. And we think that there's a really good sweet spot when it comes to that case level micro simulations and then simulations. That's not to say lectures are not impactful. They absolutely are. But we hear about the fatigue from students over time, that they're looking for something a little bit more hands-on, a little bit more practice-based in their course, and some variety. And that's where the teaching role for the faculty member, they're the expert. They're bringing in their experiences, they're connecting it to their readings, and then they're lecturing off of that. And the students are reflecting, and they're analyzing, and they're thinking. When we get them into more of the simulation levels, they're thinking, they're deciding, and they're acting, and then they're learning from those. Like, if you have the opportunity to do external projects, a big part of what I do is I work with business schools on accreditation and what they can do throughout their curriculum to think about sequencing, what's more appropriate for their students for assurance of learning, those types of things. And we always get to the conversation of the external projects, you know, where the students are working with a real company and they're working on a project. Look, those are fantastic. If you're doing it, don't stop doing it. That's amazing. Now, in the changing modalities that we're faced with, that might be a little bit trickier, but they deal with real world problems, the real world, but they also inherently have real risk. So that is something to be mindful of. But the great thing is it's highly variable, so it's going to be a unique experience for every student group that goes through it. We take on the coaching role as faculty, right? And then the students are really experiencing. They're acting, initiating, and they're experiencing. When it comes to scaling and it comes to doing these things consistently, having some decent variability, we find that there's a really good opportunity within the case level micro simulations and simulations. So if you don't think this stuff matters, let's just pull it back really quick. I want to actually go back to a question that I asked many of you in the annual conference when, gosh, it feels like a lifetime ago, but it was last year in Houston. And I asked you a simple question. And I said, look, just take for a moment right now, think about the 1,700 founders of the fastest growing ventures in US firms. What's the mean age of those founders? You just take a moment, think about that for a second. What's the mean age? Well, I'm guessing that most of you said it was going to be in the 20s or maybe low 30s. Based on the research that came from MIT and Kellogg by Pierre Azoulay and others, 45 years old was the average age of the founders. And I know that totally just goes against what we think about when we think about Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, right? And even when we think about Silicon Valley, venture capitalists, they're targeting people under 30. Look, we could look at the forward stock multiples of all this. We're not going to get into all this stuff. But if you look at the age, okay, on the x-axis, if you look at the age, look at when the companies really started to take off. They're older. The founders were older. This is counter to our thoughts, right? So why 45? And this is why I want to get it back into the experiential learning piece. Look, older entrepreneurs have access to 3 different types of capital: human capital, social capital, financial capital. The human capital one's the really interesting thing. And that's because they have more experience effectively running companies. not just running companies, but running companies' operations, their marketing and sales, their finance, their human resources, their culture. They start figuring out products and what customer needs and how to deal with constraints. They understand strategic opportunities. We also looked at the research and we found that recent graduates lack the necessary soft skills. I think at times we do a great job of building those hard skills, but the soft skills are the area that we need to improve. There's 5 attributes, the top 5 attributes that are missing. Okay, leadership, communication, problem solving, my God, time management, and initiative. Those are the top 5 attributes missing. And when you don't do these things, you start having problems with interpersonal relationships in the workplace, failure to meet business objectives, inability to even develop or adapt, and then also too functionally or too technically oriented. But if we could develop these skills, that not only helps their immediate employability, that will help their future promotability. We have to do a better job here. Back to this concept of failing, I love Tom Kelly over at IDEO. He really helped really think of this whole process, this design process that actually we use at our company called design thinking. But it talks about failing early, failing often, so we can start succeeding sooner. So think about that. What do we do about it? Well, we know we have to develop their human capital. We have to create more experiences in the classroom that can be taken into the industry. We have to better develop their hard and their soft skills. And we have to create opportunities for our students to fail more. We cannot be afraid of this. They need to fail more. Experiential learning allows you to do this. And I made the case that, look, you could better develop these skills with microsimulations. So let me give you a quick introduction to our microsimulations. That's why you're here. I know. I wanted to build a little bit of a case to this stuff, right? So let me talk to you about our microsimulations. Okay. When we talk about microsimulations, we're thinking about these short exercises, these short simulations. They can range from 30 minutes, and we have many versions that are up to 90 minutes as well. Okay, but they're individual simulations. One of the interesting things is they emulate a day in the life of someone in a certain role. So they assume the role of a very specific person within a company. They might be a consultant, they might be a director of sales, they might be a manager of a small team, depending on what version they're using. And they're expected to solve problems that those types of people would normally solve. They get immediate feedback. So once they've completed this exercise, this simulation, they get immediate feedback. And they get actionable feedback. And they can see what strengths they need to continue and what weaknesses they need to actually develop a bit more. It's highly developmental with our microsimulations. It's highly developmental. So each microsimulation offers what we call an IDP, and that's an individual development plan that actually walks them through creating a SMART goal. So if you remember SMART goals, those are those specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound goals to actually improve on the skills that are being assessed in these microsimulations. And then, God forbid, it's realistic and fun. So I lead our products and our services teams here at Capsim, and we get lots of feedback from customers. And we're always, mining that feedback. We're trying to get as much from customers from formal and informal surveys and conversations. And I could tell you this, students' experience using our microsimulations have bar none been far and away the best experiences they've had with any type of homework activity. They love it. They really do. They're engaged with it. It's small enough. It feels real enough. So the fidelity's there. Let me show you what this actually looks like. So with these microsimulations, we put them into an inbox, an email inbox even. And this is all based on research around in-basket exercises and how these can really be used to assess skills. So we put them into an email environment, and they're teed up with who they are in this company, what their role is, who's in their company, what they sell, whatever is pertinent to this scenario, okay? And they are getting emails from all sorts of different people. We kind of pitch it as, look, you were gone from a long weekend or maybe a vacation, and you came back to an email inbox full. And there's all sorts of different things that we do to kind of add to the fidelity and get them to think and actually experience this role. So it ranges from a drive file. So think about like OneDrive or something like that, where you actually have a series of files. You have several emails from different people. Now, when you get emails from people, sometimes they're just informational. Sometimes it's just, hey, just wanted to give you a quick heads up. There's no need to reply. Sometimes you're actually given the opportunity to have responses. And these responses are often going to be some type of multiple choice response. And there's some already crafted out responses, and you need to choose what is the best course of action to take. You don't have to type out a response. Don't worry about that stuff. You just click which one you want. And sometimes that will actually trigger a different type of email or an instant message. So there's all sorts of instant messages that are available and things like that. But we usually present these, the students with sometimes there's a poor response in there. Sometimes there's a good response in there. But there's always going to be a best response. And those responses are tapping into some of the skills that are being assessed in the given inbox experience. So they go through this. Sometimes they're a timed activity. Sometimes they aren't. And then you get some really great feedback from that. So when students are done, I talked about that immediate feedback. They get immediate feedback. They can see overall, how did they perform? They could see a percentile of the general population that went through this to see how they scored. We kind of explain what percentiles are. And then we let them know where their current level of skill proficiency is based on a development index. So they can see if they're a novice, intermediate, or really advanced, and at what level of consistency are they among that. They'll see a self-awareness score. And one of the cool things is before they go through the inbox experience is they're actually faced with a self-assessment, a really brief self-assessment. And it's based on each of the skills that are being assessed in the simulation. And it'll say, how good do you think you are in these? Because we're going to ask them how good they think they are, match it with how good they actually are, and then see where their gap score is. So you'll see here, it has their assessment score, their self-assessment score. Hopefully they're underrating themselves. We know Dunning-Kruger will actually show its face in these scenarios. But that's okay. We help students avoid some of that skill shock when they think that they were performing a lot better than they actually were, or they were stronger in some of these skills. And then we walk them through that individual development plan. So at the highest level, so once they're done with the microsimulation, we're going to let them know how they performed, and then they can go the next level down. And the next level down is just looking at some developmental tactics. How can I improve on some of these skills that I think are really important for me to improve? We're going to give them some very specific developmental tactics. Sometimes if it's around organization, it's talking about creating a list. Every day when you get into the office or you start your school day, create a list. Tackle the more challenging things first. Things like that. So very tangible tactics that they can use to develop those skills. And if they want to go even a step further, what you can have them do is really go through that individual development plan where they're creating those specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound goals, those SMART goals. And what it gets the students to do is take a step back, reflect, think how they did. Why does this matter to me? Why does this skill matter to me right now? Give me some examples of how this is used in school or my career where I'm actually using this skill. Okay, so it gets the students to reflect and buy into this whole idea of skill building. And then they create a plan and we walk them through the different steps about that. And then that can become a great opportunity for the faculty in the classroom to actually discuss. And we're not going to have them discuss on the individual student's performance. Of course, they could do that on a one-on-one, but if we're looking at the macro level, the course level, we give some course level analytics to say, you know, these are the top, this is how your class scored on each of these skills. And what I do in my class is I use an inbox microsimulation around ethical decision making. And I'll get into that in just a little bit, but I use one around ethical decision making. And I essentially have the students, before I even do a module in my class, it's not an ethics class, before I have them do a module on ethics, I have them actually go through the inbox product. So it's Capsim inbox. And I have them essentially they assume the day in the life of a manager at a hotel. They're faced with all these different issues about whether a client should fly you out for a conference, as well as your significant other, and what to do with somebody that was potentially stealing. There were some bottles of wine that were short in the most recent shipment to the hotel. But it gets them to think about these skills that underpin ethical decision making. And then I talk about it in class and I say, all right, as a class, generating solutions or evaluating consequences, these are where we need to spend a little bit more time on. And let's go into what that actually means and how to do this effectively. You know, versus, all right, everyone seems to be able to do a pretty good job of identifying stakeholders, right? So it gives me the opportunity to not only have them think about this, they go through the activity, they start to go through the individual development plan. So they're doing that reflection, they're setting their goals. So they've dug into some of these skills a little bit. And then I could bring this back as an educator and talk about it in the actual classroom. So let me give you some practical use cases on how this is used actually within the curriculum. And I'll start by talking about DePaul University, where I teach. And this is the graduate program. And I broke this up into a couple columns here. So I'm showing you the course that are using our products in some capacity. They're either using a microsimulation of ours, a simulation, or an assessment. And when it comes to assessments, I'll drill into that a little bit. In this case, for the most part, it's either a comprehensive examination that they're doing, or it's a 360 assessment. So on the microsimulation side, when the students first come into the graduate program, whether it's their MS in HR, MS in management, their MBA, they're going to do a leadership and OB course. And that's our first dipstick of their skills. And how they actually do this is we're assessing their general management skills, their ethical decision-making skills, and their time management skills. So we're getting an initial read on how they're actually performing and what skills they need to build. Immediately, this helps because it informs the students a little bit more on how to take a little bit more ownership of their curriculum, of their master's program, to say, all right, if I really want to build these skills, they can work with their advisor and start to say, all right, I need to build my leadership skills. How do I actually do this? All right, where can I get a little bit more depth of knowledge on this and practice this stuff? So they go through general management, ethical decision-making, and then time management. Managing human capital, they go through a people management microsimulation. That's a little bit different than the general management one, because the people management is a little closer to managing people. So it gets into a lot of those interpersonal people issues. And then as they go on, most of the time, there's a lot of crossover with the curriculum, but most students in our master's programs are going to be taking some type of strategic management of human capital. And I'm just highlighting the MBA program for a moment here, because what they do there is they have an interesting use case of pre-post testing within the actual course. So they'll, within one of the first few weeks, they'll assess their people management skills, and then they'll start to build their individual development plans, take a little bit more ownership of how they're going to build those skills. And then the actual remediation occurs within that course. So they build a lot of those people skills, those people management skills within there, and then we post test it. So they take it one more time at the end of the course, and they could see the delta of their improvement. And then tying it all together in the capstone course, so where I teach, and then in this case, it's a global strategic management course at DEPAUL. So it's the last class, the last core requirement that they're taking in their MBA program. Like I said, it's not an ethics course, but I have some ethical decision-making components within the course, and I use the microsimulation to tee up the whole module around ethics. And the great thing is they took an ethical decision-making assessment at the beginning of their program. Now they're taking it near the end of the program, or just about at the end of their program, so they can really see the change that occurred, not course embedded, but program level. So you can see how they built those skills over time. I'll give you one other example. Unfortunately, at the time of this presentation for ACBSP, I wasn't able to get permission to actually use the specific school, so I would love to share, but I will share that it is a ACBSP accredited school. And I just want to give you a quick idea of how they use this in their undergraduate program. So when it comes to our microsimulations, they're great for undergraduate, graduate, and I'll give you a couple other use cases and ideas of how you can use this in other programs as well. But what they do is they initiate students to this concept in their Principles of Management course. It's usually their 300 level course. They got into the business school, they're taking their Principles of Management course, and they're going to do their general management, people management, and ethical decision-making microsimulations. And if you notice, the content coverage is pretty succinct there with, or pretty aligned with Principles of Management. I mean, they're learning general management, they're learning planning, organizing, leading, controlling, those types of things, right? They're talking about managing people. And then of course, any good Principles of Management course is going to be talking about ethics and ethical decision-making. So they align those with the chapters of the book as they read them. So as they're going through some of these concepts, they'll align their inbox experience with the chapter. And then they get a post-test. So in their strategic management, which is their capstone course, as they're doing a simulation, one of our larger simulations, they are also going through these inbox experiences on general people management and then ethical decision making. And again, they can get a little bit more of a program-wide pre-post level of data, not just for the students, which is fantastic. They can see how they built they improve their skills over time. Hopefully they improve their skills, but they can also see it on a program level, and then they can remediate as they see fit when it comes to questions around sequencing or content that's actually being covered in some of the subsequent courses and so on. So those are just two quick use cases of how you can use these microsimulations. Now, if you really want to knock it out of the park and make this experience really cool, I'll show you how. So when you're thinking about using Inbox, our product, our microsimulation, think about differentiating your program, okay? Focus on what makes your program, either your course or your program, unique and valuable. Now look, at each of your business schools, you have a unique value proposition, hopefully, right? You have a unique value proposition. So differentiate off of that. So focus on what actually makes your program or your course unique and valuable, okay? You can bake this right into these microsimulations into your accreditation process. You get individualized scores on skills. You don't have to even pre and post test it, although that's more of a best practice out there. But you can actually use these across a variety of courses and use that for your accreditation process for your assurance of learning. You can even customize this stuff. So we have a whole authoring platform where if you don't like what we have off the shelf, which I will show you in just a moment, a little bit later, if you don't like what we have off the shelf, or you want to create something really unique to your program, you can customize. You can create any day in the life experience. I mean, if you think about it, when you think about how we do our jobs, a big part of our jobs, right, is in our email inbox, right? It's communication between different people and across a variety of scenarios and situations, whether it's a message, a text message, an instant message, whatever it may be. You can simulate that experience and you can build skills, whether it's hard skills around marketing and understanding, you know, product, price, promotion, place. You could do that, or you can even tap into the soft skills. And we have some great soft skill in Microsimulations, what we call inboxes. I keep going back to that, that are available right off the shelf. But like I said, you can customize this and you can really leverage what your program does best and build a really meaningful experience, so that when students are asking, why should I go to your business school? Why should I go to your school? You can really have a different level of conversation there and say, we have personalized our experiential learning to create a unique education package for you. Now, there's other things you could do there. What we've already heard from our customers is they're thinking about using these as live case competitions, where actually students are creating the content to create live cases. So they research the case that actually occurred, and instead of looking at it completely in hindsight, they create their own case and how it all transpired, but through an email interface. And then other students actually go through that and experience it, and then faculty or whomever judges it. Look, you can bring this to your teaching or excellence centers and have them create content. Instructional designers are one of the primary people that we would love to have conversations with, to say, look, you can customize this type of learning. We have an easy to use platform to actually enable you doing that. When you're looking at continuing education, so the department that's involved with continuing education, you can have special created content around that. I'm sure almost every one of our the schools represented in the webinar today have a continuing education department. I'm sure they love to teach, you know, project management and some of those certification courses. You can create custom experiences where they can tap into these things as they're getting their general seat hours to actually get that certification or certificate. You can even build skill building for alumni. So one of the things that we always think about is, all right, well, we've got the students in our program, we're really creating a unique value proposition for them, they're learning. What can we do from there once they graduate? How do we get them either back in the door and further their education more formally, or how can we create less formal program level offerings to build skills for our alumni? And again, differentiate our program. Choose my school, because not only do we give you this great experience, this great education experience, but we also back you up as you move throughout your career, and we help you build skills throughout your career. Okay, just some ideas there. And if you're looking for something more robust than just a micro simulation, I'll just spend a few moments on this. That's where you would use one of our simulations. And look, we've been in business for over 35 years now. And one of the first things that we really did was we focused on corporate education, and we built these larger simulations. And simulations are fantastic, right? The larger ones. Over 150,000 people, students use our more traditional simulations in higher ed each year. Okay, and they're flexible. So it's going to take more than 30 minutes, instead of 30 to 90 minutes in your course, they're going to take about 30 to 90% of your course. But you can do this individually or as teams. You can speed up time, so you could really simulate running a company over up to 8 years within a course, right? So simulations are really nice like that. You can have lots of breadth, and you can do the deep dive stuff. You can go into depth. So you can focus on a few concepts, or give them the 30,000 foot view. It's great at removing the silos. Cross-functional integration is a core component of our simulations. Students understand how one decision impacts another. You want to launch a new product? All right, how does that work with your engineers? Then how does your marketing team think about that? How do you operationalize that and have capacity to actually produce it? And then how do you finance this whole investment? So they see how a simple decision like that actually cascades through the company. And it gets them to engage and fail. So we know that simulations are highly engaging, but we allow everyone to stay in the game, in the simulation, even if they go bankrupt. We give them just enough money to get back to $0 in their bank account, but we won't let them go negative for long. And it keeps them moving forward. But we often find that students that perform the worst, that are still engaged, learn the most. They failed. They failed early, they failed often, and then they can see what it takes to then turn that company around and succeed. So the decision areas for any of our primary simulations, our traditional simulations that are out there, you're making decisions into four key functional areas. So research and development, marketing, production, and finance. But you can add all sorts of different depth and breadth to that. So there's additional modules that you can choose from to create a really unique experience. And even if you wanted to create your own, you could do that with us. So if you wanted to create something that was just different, that wasn't out there, you can connect with us and you can create one free of charge. So just as an example, when you're doing research and development, you're making decisions about products and how they're placed on a customer's perceptual map. So are you meeting expectations? What are their expectations? How long is it going to take for us to either revise a current product or also invent a new product? And then when you get to marketing, you're doing the other P's of the marketing outside of product, and you're doing the promotion, price, and place. So you're pricing your products, you're seeing, oh, is this really impacting the awareness? So the promotion of our product or the place, like where they're actually accessing the product. You're forecasting. They're learning that, oh, all right, the forecasting is really quite a science. It's difficult to do, right? We can have great expectations. We can have really high goals, but we have to be realistic and see how do all of these decisions actually meet our customers' criteria, and then what's happening out there with my competitors. And then they operationalize this in production, and they figure out, all right, well, based on that forecast, how many units do I need to produce? Do I have enough capacity for this? Do I need more over time? How automated am I? What are my costs to actually produce these units? So they're grappling with those types of questions. And then finally, finance is thinking about, all right, I have money coming into my company. I have money going out of my company. All right, so I have my cash flow. What do I need to do? Do I need to raise capital? If I have too much capital, how do I spend it effectively in the right areas? There's a variety of scenarios that are available. So the interesting thing about this is you can have a nascent industry, so it's a little bit more of you're a bit of a newer entrant in the market. You could have a global industry, and then you can have more of a mature industry. You can have a global industry that's both nascent or mature, okay? So you could be the incumbent, or you could talk about, no, I'm more of the emerging type of technology out there. All of these, as I mentioned, they focus on cross-functional integration, tactics, building business acumen, even team building if you put them in teams. That's often one of the things that when I have my students do their presentation, they always talk to me because I put them in teams of about 5 students. Now, one of the things they always tell me is how much they learned in terms of how to effectively work with a team, leverage other team members' strengths, deal with conflict, deal with schedules, deal with challenges there, but actually you bake all that in to actually rise up and succeed, because that's what they're going to have to do once they get into their careers, right? There's all sorts of products that we have that are microsimulations, simulations, or assessments. When I talked about those microsimulations, the product is Capsim Inbox, and then we have a whole bunch of topics that are available there. So these are kind of like all the different products that are these in-basket exercises. So they range, we talked about general management, people management, ethical decision making. We have time management, business law, human resource management. That's a really cool one. Strategic marketing. It's an interesting, hey, I have this product. Do I want to sell it to a certain company? Do I want to sell it to Amazon? There's some other implications there. We have one on escape rooms. So you can actually have your students go through kind of like it could either be individual or team-based, where they have to go through puzzles and clues and be able to get out of their virtual room within a certain amount of time. This is often used in program orientation. It's a really interesting one that customers have really enjoyed using. We actually use that at DePaul. We have it on microeconomics, macroeconomics coming soon, ops management, cultural awareness, sports management. There's even more, and there's more that you could create as well if you were so interested. If you are interested in any of these things, feel free to shoot a message in the screen, in the chat window. Happy to talk to you more about that. Also, if you're looking, I think the best next steps you could take is get on the phone with us. We love talking to you, and we love hearing what your challenges are and what your ideas are. Reach out to us at welcome@capsim.com. Just shoot us a message saying, whatever, I saw your presentation at ACVSB. I'm really interested in learning more about your microsimulations or your simulations or whatever these assessments are. Don't have time to go over all of them, but please reach out to us. Welcome@capsim.com. We're going to be able to talk to you a whole lot more. And at this point, I'd like to open up to questions. Thank you so much.